welcome to the Goal Podcast, news and commentary from Gun Owners Action League, your leading voice for the Massachusetts gun owner.
I'm Garrett, across the table as usual from Jeffrey. It's almost 80 degrees outside.
I know, Memorial Day's coming up. It's almost officially, the few weeks of decent spring are, have almost run their course, and then we're right into summer.
I don't feel like we had all that many decent weeks of spring.
I think if you add up the individual days, it's about 2 weeks.
It adds up to about 2 weeks.
Yeah, give or take.
We went to Block Island over the weekend.
Nice.
You ever been out there?
No.
It was cool. I mean, cool, like, day trip. I don't know how desperately I need to go back because, I don't want to knock it because it really is a nice place. It just, by the time the end of the day rolled around, we're like, oh, okay, I think we've seen pretty much everything. So it's boogie. But it was a cool day trip. Good stuff to see. Did some walking, hiking, shopping, et cetera, et cetera.
So yeah, might as well while we're in that right part of the year.
Yeah, the suicidal people will be out there next weekend after Memorial Day. Then it starts getting like it's on season and everything starts getting nuts. So what's new and improved with you?
Spring turkey season's pretty much wrapped up. Got all my stuff put away the other day. We did get out.
We did.
And we did hear a turkey.
We heard a turkey. He was
briefly. I
have to say publicly and for everybody that I appreciate you rolling your ass out of bed at 2:00 in the morning to come and get me so that I could have a crack at a bird. I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, that's about accurate. That was about a 2 a.m. alarm clock.
So hats off. I do appreciate that. We didn't make contact, but we were out there and I heard him. He wasn't that far away.
Yeah. Well, we after texting John, I think he had a point that we probably shot all the dumb ones.
Yeah, right. Between the two of you shot all the dumb ones.
So next year, we'll if it works out as well going into next season, as it did for this season, as far as got a good idea of where they're roosting up, good intel on where they're living, then we'll make a plan for an opening day hunt. So
I like it.
We'll get some of the dumber ones out of the way. Get the dumb
ones out of the way. There you go. No, I like it. That's cool. So anyway, I really do appreciate it, man. Thank you for dragging me out there.
It's a good time. It's always a good time.
It was good. It was a good morning.
Yeah, having a cigar at 7 a.m.
Didn't take a bird, but I have no complaints. It was still a good morning.
So what's going on in firearms news?
Oh, way up at the Supreme Court. So this one's been making the rounds the last few days. Actually, just the last couple of days because we knew it was coming, and then the decision came down today. May 20th, 2024, the Supreme Court declined to hear a challenge brought against Maryland's 2013 assault weapons ban. This one's been banning around for a bunch of years. The ban was challenged years and years ago. The Fourth Circuit, to nobody's surprise, upheld the ban. Then in 2022, there was a new lawsuit after Bruin came down, and the Supreme Court ordered the appeals court to look at it again. It was one of those, here, take another look at this things. Mm-hmm. The appeals court still hasn't bothered to review the case, even though it's been almost 2 years since the Supreme Court said, take another look at it.
Well, if they're crapping on the Second Amendment, the whole thing about a speedy trial is that's got to be child's play to them.
Probably not the only area of jurisprudence that they're trying to screw over. So anyway, as of right now, the Supreme Court declined on Monday the 20th. They declined to hear the challenge because the plaintiffs in that case were like, it's been 2 years. We're sick of this. Let's go directly to Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, nope, we're not hearing it. So what does that mean? It doesn't really mean anything. The Supreme Court rarely ever gets involved in cases that don't come up all the way through, through the appeals process. It would be really kind of out of character for them to jump on it until the Fourth Circuit follows their original instructions and rehears the case under Bruin. So don't read too much into it.
And I would say they have other assault weapons, or the so-called assault weapons bans cases kind of in the works.
Yeah.
So kicking it back down and saying, hey, we're not going to pursue this right now. I think really just they're going to be reviewing that sort of information anyway. So
yeah, there's a number of assault weapons being.
I would almost be concerned if they did take it on, knowing that they have other similar cases that are probably a little bit further in the pipeline.
Because that would indicate that they've already got a mind to do something, and that they're But tangentially, the Illinois assault weapons ban has been distributed for conference. So I believe on the 23rd, which is a couple days from now, it'll be this Thursday. It should go to conference, and I guess we'll see whether or not they're gonna hear it after that.
Now, what'll be an interesting question is if that ruling, let's say hypothetically, let's put on the hypothetical sunglasses.
Take off the tinfoil hat and put on the hypothetical.
So
hat.
if they rule that a quote unquote assault style weapons ban would be unconstitutional, I wonder what Ohio would try to do as they're trying to ban what they're calling now mass casualty guns.
God, mass casualty. I read that article and I was like, what? What the hell is a mass casualty gun?
Hey, trying a new,
right. They're trying a new definition.
This is new Coke.
Yeah.
This is new Coca-Cola.
That's right.
Before they go back to Coke Classic.
New Coke. So the definition from the proposed law is, quote, any semi-automatic firearm designed or specifically adapted to fire more than 31 cartridges without reloading, other than a firearm chambering only 22 caliber short, long, or long rifle cartridges.
So that's anything magazine fed.
Pretty much, yeah. So I believe, and I'm not all that, topped up on Ohio law, but I think that the 31 cartridges thing has to do with a law that was passed a little while ago. There, as far as magazine capacity limits, so that's probably why it says 31 cartridges, because you read that you're like, that's arbitrary. What the But
well, I would instinctively I would just say, okay, they're targeting 30 round AR mags, specifically, but they're saying any firearm designed or specifically adapted to fire more than 31. So I think that would encompass anything that would be potentially capable.
Yeah, that's anything mag-fed.
Of anything mag-fed. So
anything with an external magazine.
Specifically anything that can accept Glock magazines, because Glock has the 33 round stick mags.
Yep.
So
anything that'll take a drum mag, anything that'll take,
It's another attempt at people who are insufficiently educated to...
That's a nice way to put it. It's a very diplomatic way to put that.
To affect an outcome that they want, but again, they're not able to parse out with specificity to ban the behavior that they want to ban, or to ban the result that they want to ban, because they're not, probably said that backwards, but they're not addressing the behavior. They're just addressing the implement, and in doing that, they're wrapping up basically any semi-automatic magazine.
Yeah, and you could argue that that's by design, even though they'll say, oh no, totally not.
What do they say? Don't attribute to malice what can be attributed to stupidity. So I don't know. It depends. Did they write the bill, or did Giffords write the bill? Did
always
Bloomberg's lawyers write the bill?
That's right.
But they have to be absolutely psyched. All the gun control groups over. Do you hear about Dexter Taylor found guilty?
God. So we've been
talk about being railroaded.
We have been talking about this the last couple episodes. A guy in New York. Right. And we took the case to like a certain little piece. This guy is totally getting railroaded.
I mean, his attorney's going to have an absolute field day considering the conduct of the judge.
I hope so.
A judge who's supposed to be impartial. The purpose of the judge is to oversee and make sure that it's a fair fight. And for a judge, this is the judge that said the Second Amendment doesn't exist in my courtroom.
Yeah, because they're complaining about like quote unquote backlash, during the sentencing phase. And it's like the Second Amendment doesn't exist in my courtroom. What kind of a statement is that?
Denying that you have constitutional rights in a court of law. To me, or I think anybody with a sane state of mind would say that whole trial has to be thrown out.
I would hope so.
At a bare minimum, you're having a complete retrial, if not having the charges completely thrown out. And then now you can't say that the guy would get a fair trial and just dismiss it.
Yeah. To catch everybody up, Dexter Taylor, the hobbyist who builds gun for his own purposes, has no history of violent crime, never hurt anybody, never sold guns illegally, never did anything. He's building guns for himself. doing something that is perfectly legal most other places in this country. But because he lives in New York, he has been arrested, charged, convicted, and now sentenced for manufacturing guns for his own purposes. He's been sentenced to 10 years in a prison.
That's no joke.
10 years. Tell me, unless you are a judge trying to make, or, unless you're somebody trying to make an example of a guy, what nonviolent offender gets 10 years felony?
With no criminal, with no
first time,
no violent
offense.
Criminal history.
Exactly.
I mean, you could make the argument, let's say he had multiple instances of assault and battery and all sorts of wild nonsense
or something like that.
And he was a prohibited person, and then he went this route of unlawful possession of firearms. No. It's just a dude who was building his own guns.
For his own, for his own
many
use.
people do.
Yeah.
I will not confirm nor deny my involvement. And the next decade of his life, unless something changes, will be spent.
And of course, it's felony, so he'll be prohibited for life, which is,
So not only does he'll spend the next 10 years of his life in a prison cell with actual violent offenders.
With actual criminals,
Not only does he lose his right to possess or ever have a firearm again, isn't allowed to vote ever again.
All that stuff.
You no longer have any say in any sort of process over this.
Anything, all the stuff that goes along with, having your rights stripped from you for what? For building a piece of machinery for your own use. It's not like he knocked over package stores, not like he robbed banks, not like he, murdered people or anything like that. He has no criminal history whatsoever.
And by a judge who says that his constitutional rights don't exist in the courtroom. Unbelievable.
I mean, it should be a slam dunk for an appeal, but it's New York, so who knows? I feel terrible for the guy. He has, subsequent to his sentencing, he released a statement. I'm not going to read it here because I want everybody within the sound of my voice to seek it out and read it for yourself. It's pretty good stuff. Pretty good stuff. So Dexter Taylor, read his post-sentencing statement, public statement, and we'll see what goes on. But this is like a pretty serious miscarriage of justice as far as I'm concerned.
Now, this is a new Second Amendment battle. I say new. None of the battle's really new, but the anti-firearms people are always looking for some form of leverage, someone to target, and their new target of interest, it might be, is homeowners associations,
HOAs.
So looking at last year, so this is going back to April 2023. You might remember a story about a kid, Ralph Yarl. He's a teen, Missouri. Went to the wrong house, rang the doorbell, and ended up getting shot for it.
Yes.
So as the story goes, he's a young guy. I think he was like 16, 17, somewhere around there. Old enough to drive, but anyway, he was picking up his younger brothers and had a mix-up in the address. 123 Main Street versus 123 Main Avenue.
Yeah, something like that.
Rings the doorbell, 85-year-old homeowner, Andrew Lester, allegedly, because, criminal trial is still pending. It's scheduled for October this year. Opened the inside door and shot him through the glass storm door that was still closed.
Yeah.
Hits Yarl. Lester was claiming self-defense.
Yeah.
From a cursory glance, it doesn't look like a very good shoot.
It does not look like a good shoot.
I think you're going to have a hard time justifying that you were in such fear for your life behind a closed door that your decision was to open the door.
Yeah, and then shoot through the glass.
And then shoot. So
yeah.
It's going to be an uphill battle to win that claim of self-defense. So, but that's going to be for lawyers in that trial. And as far as I know, the U.S. Constitution does exist in Missouri.
Maybe not particular courtrooms, but
Well, we'll see. So criminal charges are pending, but the family of Yarl filed a civil suit, which is not to be unexpected.
Sure.
They filed a civil suit against Lester, but they also named the local homeowners association, Highland Acres Homes Association, in the lawsuit.
This is interesting. Like,
it's a bit of a new
tack. Yeah.
New tack. So in a statement released by the family, they said, Quote, this incident not only shattered our family, but also exposed a critical gap in our societal fabric where the safety of our children is jeopardized by reckless action. So like that's kind of...
I can't really argue that.
Form letter,
Yeah.
Public statement that went through an attorney. So they said, through the civil suit, we aim to spark a dialogue on the importance of responsible gun ownership and community safety measures of using words, not weapons. That to me sounds like the sentence that's written by Giffords or Brady or someone.
Yeah, that was dropped in by somebody.
We aim to spark a dialogue that also has a check attached to it.
Yeah.
So they went on, including the homeowners association in this lawsuit, underscores the importance of collective responsibility in safeguarding our communities. Their knowledge of a potentially dangerous individual in the neighborhood without taking adequate precautions is unacceptable. His, and they mean Jarl's,
The victim, yeah.
His ordeal must serve as a wake-up call for our nation to prioritize child safety and enact meaningful reforms to protect our youth from gun violence.
There we go.
So,
there we go.
a lot of, I think a lot of Giffords language, a lot of
especially that last sentence, yeah. So the interesting thing here is that they're apparently trying to set a precedent wherein they apply pressure to homeowners associations as if the HOA was somehow supposed to know that this guy was going to be...
they're saying the HOA's knowledge of a potentially dangerous individual in the neighborhood without taking precautions is unacceptable.
So what does that mean? Does that mean that there's demonstrable history there, that this guy had like some kind of a violent history or something like that? Or in the absence of that, are they just trying to apply pressure to homeowners associations to say you shouldn't have guns there?
So, what the suit is claiming against the HOA is they say that it's the duty of the HOA. So this is what the lawsuit's claiming. And this is where, it gets a little scary. It's the duty of the HOA to refrain from careless and negligent conduct against others. Okay. The aforementioned duty included the exercise of reasonable care in its instruction, direction, management, and or control regarding the use of a firearm in and on the properties making up the HOA or residences.
And now we're taking a left turn because now we're saying that the HOA is supposed to be, adjudicating what private individuals do with their private property.
Or that an HOA supersedes constitutional rights.
Yeah.
That one would be, could legally forfeit their constitutional rights by signing an HOA agreement. So they said that the homeowners association, so, the defendant, carelessly and negligently failed to promulgate regulations sufficient to prevent its residents from firing a loaded weapon at a minor.
So they forgot to put that in the bylaws, Oh, we forgot the part in the covenant about not shooting kids.
By the way, don't shoot children. And it just says, at a minor, so who knows about adults. But the HOA carelessly and negligently failed to inform its residents of its expectations involving the use of a firearm on association grounds, including homes within the boundaries of the association.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not their position.
Right.
They carelessly and negligently created and allowed the existence of an atmosphere where defendant Lester, the guy, could shoot the plaintiff after ringing the defendant's doorbell.
What the hell does that even mean? Created and allowed the existence of an atmosphere? That sounds pretty weak to me. That sounds like, all right, we got to come up with a couple more bullet points. Let's,
yeah, two's a little soft.
Yeah.
But it also says they carelessly and negligently failed to inform and or educate the defendant Lester about the dangers of discharging a loaded weapon within the grounds of the association. So I guess the HOA is supposed to do its own safety talk. I'm not sure.
All of this stuff is already covered by law.
And they're saying that the HOA carelessly and negligently failed to render aid to the plaintiff after he was shot. I think they're saying
backing for that. I mean,
that it's the HOA's responsibility to provide
emergency
trauma care, which
no,
they're not going to do because that's a whole new set of legal liabilities that no lawyer would ever advise them to take on.
No, all of this stuff sounds like it's already covered by law.
Oh, absolutely. But similar to, instead of Like we saw the cancel culture thing come out.
Yeah.
Instead of going after the individual, we're going to go after your sponsors, or we're going to go after your platform.
Right.
We're going to go after your ability to operate.
We're going to go after the pockets, and then we're also going to poison the waters.
But saying that the homeowners association bears a responsibility to regulate firearms within the homes that it covers.
That's what this really feels like, is they're putting out a message saying, hey, we're going to sue you too. If something happens on your property, you're going to get sued too.
Exactly.
So you're better off demanding that nobody have guns in your association.
So when someone is looking to move in, now this would be my presumption. So this is now going from what's in the lawsuit to, reading a little tea leaves, but to the extent where part of a homeowners association, like if you wanted to buy a home and
in the
you gotta
covenant, yeah, sure,
you have to sign off and say, I do not own firearms.
Right, I won't have any guns here.
Don't have guns in my home, and here's my training certificates, or in some way creating a
barrier to entry.
Not only a barrier to entry, but to use a term from the suit, an atmosphere where one is presuming that an HOA would have the legal authority to say, you sign away your constitutional rights or you're not allowed to buy a home here.
This smells to me, I don't think you're being unreasonable or reaching at all. I think you're exactly right. The people behind this lawsuit, whoever they may be, are putting homeowners associations on notice that they stand to be sued. So you better tell people not to have guns there, or we're going to sue you next.
Very interesting. Obviously, it's always a new tact. There's a little part of me that feels that every time the gun control crowd has to pivot, it's not great. It's a new issue to deal with, but it's also showing that they're running out of places to go, and they're starting to really grasp it at straws.
Yeah, they don't seem to be running out of straws though.
Well, you can always make something up.
Yeah.
And I think it shows in this section of the lawsuit that they would even say that a homeowners association could be considered careless and negligent for not informing its residents that they're not allowed to shoot minors arbitrarily.
Oh, better put an extra page on the.
You didn't say that they couldn't do that, so therefore we're going to say that you're condoning it.
Yeah. So the case is ongoing. But I think you're right. This is about them.
Yeah, this is going to be handled in criminal court. Civil suit against the guy that actually did the action.
It doesn't sound like a good shoot to me. And if the guy, I hope that the young man that got shot is okay. I didn't hear any indication that the young man died. I know he was shot twice.
He survived.
That's good. It's a terrible situation. It doesn't sound like a good shoot, but that, the other half of it is kind of what we're talking about now, is the whole situation around the HOA. The criminal part of this is going to work itself out. But
like we always say, and I think this is where you see an ideological inconsistency in gun control, but the ideological consistency with the firearms owning crowd is we're saying, yes, if someone does wrong,
you should be punished.
Have due process, go into court, have a fair trial, and that's how it's supposed to be done.
He hurt that kid. It was, apparently, he hurt that kid. It was uncalled for and all those things. He should be held responsible for it.
Yeah. And as we always say, hold the individual responsible for the individual's actions.
Exactly. At the same time, this guy should be held to account for his actions, but you, Jeff, were not at fault there. So, therefore...
Never even met the guy.
Therefore, you're not responsible for it.
Anywho.
So, anyway.
But moving on, so this is going back to, some legislative ground. Now, legislatively speaking, as we've talked about in previous episodes, as of the recording of this episode, no new movement on what's going on in the state legislature.
That is correct.
Today, today's the Tuesday, the 21st.
As of today, we're still waiting, folks.
Fearless Leader was flying into Boston, so I'm sure that that Beacon Hill has been emptied out, and everybody's
so they can all go fawn over there.
So everybody can make sure that they have their appearance and rub their elbows and congratulate themselves on all the things that they are and are not doing. On a national level, there is a good piece of legislation that's attempting to go through.
Yeah.
So introduced by U.S. Congressman Bob Good Virginia, and this came out on May 8th. It's these... you're going to cringe at this.
I'm already cringing.
The Silencers Helping Us Save Hearing Act.
The Shush Act. Listen.
God, I hate this.
I hate when the other side does stupid acronyms like this.
To be fair.
In order to be, morally consistent, I have to hate it when our side does it too. That is ridiculous posturing. So...
So the
Shush Act.
Shush Act. It's but this is seeking to deregulate suppressors at the federal level and preempt state law that regulates taxes or prohibits the profession of suppressors. So this is essentially saying, we're going to remove these from the NFA. It's now just a firearms accessory like any other firearms accessory you want. You want to put a flashlight on your pistol? Have at it. You want to put a suppressor on it? Have at it.
Yeah. And importantly, prohibits it supersedes, it preempts state law that prohibits possession. So our situation here in Massachusetts is no suppressors. It's against state law here,
unless you're an SOT and you know
FFL and right. And
really, what it comes down to is unless you pay the man.
Pretty much. But yeah, the unwashed masses here can't get a general suppressor,
which is largely different than other states, and people can, where your average citizen can file the paperwork and get the tax stamp and go about their business.
Yeah, it takes forever, but yeah.
Now, when I was going through this, the full text of the bill was not available. So I was just going off the press conference, and I didn't see if there was any updates as of yet.
Shush Act.
But the statement, the press release from Representative Good's office said, quote, "I oppose any form of regulation or tax on the people's right to keep and bear arms."
I like that statement.
Thank you. "No constitutional right should be at risk due to public opinion or subject to regulatory and tax burdens."
I like that one, too.
No argument for me. "These rights certainly extend to the procurement of safety accessories for firearms."
Amen.
End quote.
Absolutely.
And that to me was the magic line, safety accessories.
Yes.
So currently there are 7 co-sponsors, and acronyms aside, would be a truly great bill if it could go through. So, if you're talking to your federal legislators for one reason or another, the Shush Act. Shush Act.
The Shh Act. Oh, my goodness. Well, so what is a suppressor?
So it kind of got into an interesting, you go down these interesting little rabbit holes. Because especially the NFA, when it was adopted, if you go all the way back to the 1930s, the final NFA that was adopted had nothing to do with what the government was trying to do at the time. Right. Because really what they were trying to do was, eliminate pistols, and they're trying to get rid of handguns, really. And when that fell apart, all these little ancillary things just kind of got glommed on. And it turned into, it's like we put so much effort into this, we have to regulate something. So they went for kind of the
home empty-handed.
They went with all the low-hanging fruit and the stuff that I think people either didn't understand or weren't really wrapping their mind around. So I was trying to find information on how suppressors ended up in the NFA in the first place. I mean, you could kind of say, all right, I see how the Tommy gun, how machine guns got involved.
Machine guns, yeah.
So yeah, I was trying to look into the information on suppressors and found some just what I thought was really interesting. The first info I can find on a particular product specifically marketed for suppressing a firearm was only in 1894. So this is
okay.
I mean, not terribly old technology.
No, not really.
If you think, 1911, that's 20 years ish before the 1911. So not a whole lot.
Have a much longer history than that.
But it came from a Swiss inventor, Jacob Stahl.
Got me.
Beats me. Swiss guy. But it was a thing for killing cattle.
I love that the patent image here shows a cow with this thing strapped to his forehead.
Yeah, you can actually look up the patent number is 516236, patented May 13th. It's if you're into the whole nature is metal thing,
that's pretty metal.
But essentially, it was designed to to essentially muffle the shot against a cow, so that you didn't, scare other cows.
So you have a bullet, this arrangement like strapped to the cow's head. It's got a bullet in it, and you fire the bullet by pulling back and releasing this firing pin, which fires the shot. Shot goes into the animal's head, but there's the thing is that there's a chamber in there, kind of like an expansion chamber that's meant to muffle the sound. So that's like the first iteration of this, of the suppressor.
Now, jump forward, a handful of years. So then they found the first commercially viable, commercially successful silencer came by means of an American inventor whose name you might recognize was Hiram Maxim. So this is...
Yeah, we know that name.
Well, this is Hiram Percy Maxim, who was the son of Hiram Stevens Maxim, who was the inventor of the Maxim machine gun. So
the son of...
what do they say? Apples and apple trees?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Firearms designers. But this is the first one that A, was commercially successful, but B, actually looks like what you would... It looks very similar to what modern suppressors look like today. So the entire concept hasn't changed very much, even though materials and CNC milling and computer modeling of gas flows have changed. But this was marketed under the name the Maxim Silencer in publications. And I found some really cool old articles going back to the early 19-teens. Specifically, the Electrical Record and Buyer's Reference had a whole article on it.
Okay.
But Maxim, but this speaks to, I think, people think of these items, especially the non-gun people. They think of these items as having some sort of nefarious intent when they were being designed.
Yeah.
So this was Maxim's interview from 1913. The Maxim silencer was developed to meet my personal desire to enjoy target practice without creating a disturbance. I've always loved to shoot, but I never thoroughly enjoyed it when I knew that the noise was annoying other people. It occurred to me one day that there was no need for the noise. Why not do away with it and shoot quietly? So Maxim said, the first time I shot the rifle, I was quite excited. I will never forget the sensation I experienced when I found out it was quiet. That was the birth of the Maxim silencer.
The birth of the Maxim silencer.
So the history of suppressors is I'm trying to be a courteous neighbor.
Trying to be a good guy.
Trying to be nice here. So that was great up until...
There we go.
Up until about 1934 and the enactment of the National Firearms Act, which imposed an excise tax on certain kinds of arms and accessories, including suppressors. The why, as to how they got caught up in the mix, I had a hard time parsing it out. There were some reported crimes out of New York, naturally.
Of course.
That the media ran with, naturally.
Home to the
and
Sullivan.
fear-mongered these, naturally, as silent killers.
Oh, my God.
Because, if you think the newspapers are bad today, they were just as just as dirty back then. They were all propaganda machines. So some of the examples I could find of the old propaganda machine at work was like in 1915, a guy, just absolutely lost it, killed his whole family.
Terrible.
The firearm happened to have a suppressor. So there you go.
Oh, therefore,
they just jumped on it. So
right. Therefore, without the suppressor, that family would still be alive.
Yeah, as if that would have changed anything.
Yeah.
Likewise, there was a 1920 story about a broad daylight robbery of a jeweler where the jeweler was murdered and, according to the newspaper, quote, neighboring tenants had heard no unusual noise, end quote. So,
therefore, it was the suppressor that allowed them to,
Now, mind you, so you have to, think outside of the narrow avenue of the story.
Yeah.
So this is right at the explosion of automobiles in New York. So you have a whole bunch of cars, which is a relatively new thing at that scale.
Yeah.
And they're all backfiring and the engines are knocking because this is still a good handful of years before leaded gasoline became a thing that reduced that engine knocking
So it could have been anything.
So you have a bunch of people who aren't used to listening to widespread vehicles.
Didn't hear anything unusual. But then there's the other
because all day long it's bang, pow, 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 pow.
But then there's the other thing that, it's New York, for crying out loud. And when the cop comes up and says, did you hear anything? You say, nope, zip it, didn't hear a thing.
Yeah.
Right?
It's funny how some stuff just never changes. So, but interestingly enough, so development on suppressors basically stalled out. So NFA goes into effect. The development of suppressors basically stalled out and really didn't pick up again until in a big way until probably the 1960s. When you had companies like H&K come out with like MP5s and
Yep.
where it started to become big. Now there were suppressors in World War II. There were suppressors in Korea, Vietnam.
Yeah, but they're very much based on the Maxim design.
And still, most suppressors use some variation. Just with a little more tech. So they're much more common today than they were 60 years ago, as far as being in the average person's repertoire of gun accessories, but they're incredibly common among across Europe, as the gun control folks love to hold Europe up as this bastion of utopia.
Yeah. Why? Because it's common courtesy. So what exactly is a silencer anyway? So we know what it is, but why does it do what it does, right? The gunshot, when we fire a shot, we hear the loud bang. When we hear that bang, it's because of a large amount of hot expanding gas that follows the bullet out of the barrel. When the bullet's fired, the cartridge case and the bullet do what's called obturate. That means they seal the barrel bore and the cartridge.
That's the vocab word of the day.
There you go.
Obturate.
Obturate. This sealing keeps the expanding gases in confinement under pressure until the bullet is unseated and expelled from the barrel. When the bullet leaves the barrel, this seal is broken suddenly, and all of that gas is suddenly released to atmospheric pressure. This causes an expanding shock wave that travels faster than the speed of sound. Interestingly, and something that people may or may not think of unless you're like into this world to this degree, that shock wave traveling faster than the speed of sound can actually overtake the bullet as it's leaving the barrel. And it can affect its flight dynamics during the transitional ballistics phase, which is the point right after it leaves the barrel. So depending on the platform and the bullets and so forth, that all has to be taken into consideration and designed for. So a supersonic bullet, just by the way, is also going to produce a sonic boom, but that's it sounds like a whip crack, and it's longer than the impulse, but that's like a teeny tiny fraction of the actual sound that you hear. Not until
you're far enough downrange that the muzzle report has dissipated significantly.
Yeah, and of course a lot of bullets are subsonic just by design. So there's also an overpressure component to it as well. This is infrasonic, so it's below the level of here. The frequency's low enough that we won't hear it, but it'll still cause sometimes huge pressure waves in the air, and you can rupture eardrums and cause damage that way, even though you can't really hear it.
That's that thump you feel in your chest on an indoor range.
Right, and the muzzle brakes make it, can make it worse.
That's how you don't create range frames, is take something with a muzzle brake onto an indoor shooting range.
Sit to my sides right here, and then I'm going to pow. So a suppressor, like Hiram Maxim was saying earlier, by design, it gives all of that expanding gas somewhere to go other than directly out of the muzzle. Principle is the same as the muffler on your car. And in fact, Maxim still exists as a company. They make muffler and silencing systems for like air systems and industrial processes. Still exists today, doing that kind of stuff. So physically speaking, your modern suppressor is typically a metal cylinder, like stainless steel, whatever, that gets threaded onto the muzzle. If you cut a suppressor open, you see a large number of what are called sound baffles. Okay, these baffles are what redirect the expanding gases. So, manufacturing methods are skiving, machining. You can, create a bunch of discs and just stack them up inside of the tube. Number of different ways you can get there. The point is, you have to have a lot of baffles, and it's going to have a hole drilled down through the middle so the bullet can get out. But all of these baffles create channels for the muzzle blast gases to expand into, right? That slows them down. It allows them to cool off, and then it allows them to leak out much more slowly than it otherwise normally would have. So it drops the sound by a significant amount.
Yeah, but that's saying that it's quieter.
Yeah, quiet's pretty relative. Yeah,
quiet's a relative term, and I've always I don't particularly care for the term silencer because I think that gives it a much more Hollywood undertone.
Yeah, because you expect it. Oh, it's silent. No, No, it's not. It's
So for one crowd, I would say, they picture the James Bond,
oh my God,
007, Sean Connery. Yeah. And then for the other crowd, it's the John Wick scene. So him and Common are walking through the train station and shooting, and just as they're passing by people, just
and nobody hears a thing.
nobody sees a thing.
No, that's not how suppressors work.
They also don't see tiles popping off of walls. But hey, Hollywood is Hollywood is.
Yeah, so quieter's pretty relative. Small arms muzzle blast can easily exceed 140, 160 decibels, which is more than enough to rupture eardrums and cause permanent hearing loss. As you know, Jeff,
I can testify to that.
This is why we're always like pounding on wear your hearing protection, wear your hearing protection. A suppressor that's well engineered can drop this number by 30, 35 decibels.
Which is significant because
significant,
the decibel scale isn't just a linear,
right.
It isn't just a linear relationship where 0 is silent. It's logarithmic, so it scales in orders of magnitude. So,
jumping up 30 decibels is a huge,
massive.
Yeah,
but
it's a big advantage.
But your starting point is so high.
Right.
It's so disproportionately high. So that scale works in both directions. So a 30 decibel increase in volume is, magnitudes higher.
It's many times higher.
It's not just
plus 30. It's So this reduction, it's a significant reduction. It drops the sound, or it can drop the sound to below the pain threshold and below the, one-time rupture your eardrums pressure. But we're still talking about like jackhammer and chainsaw levels of noise. It's not nothing. It doesn't, turn it into the James Bond tick, tick, tick thing. It's still way high enough to hear. It's still high enough to cause damage to your hearing if exposure is repeated, in close range, repeated, and so forth. So it's not Hollywood. Even the best suppressor doesn't do the John Wick and James Bond thing.
Yeah, and I think the best analogy I could think of, because I was trying to come up with ways where someone, if you've never heard one, could kind of start to place it in a realm, is a really loud motorcycle would be like a suppressed firearm. And then when you hear that bike go by that has the chopped straight pipes with no mufflers, that rattles your car windows, that's the unsuppressed.
The car alarm.
So you're going from, straight pipes on a Harley to that same Harley, but just with a little bit of a muffler. So it's still incredibly loud.
Very loud. And all this nonsense about people saying, oh, it's going to, defeat the shot spotters and all, it's nonsense. So the reason I push hard for legalization, this is like a poster child to me. The only reason for banning them at all is based on false pop culture assumptions about how they perform. On the other hand, if suppressors were more widely available, people would actually and really, be at reduced risk for hearing loss. So there's literally no rational disadvantage, and there's no rational means, rationale for banning these things. To me, they're a prime example of how, ignorant fear creates laws that hurt people. We see it over and over again, but this is like a poster child to me. It's like there's literally no downside to owning suppressors. And
I would say for the folks that say follow the science, and trust, thou shalt trust the word of the government. Well,
here you go.
I might have located a peer-reviewed and published paper on from the NCBI National Center for Biotechnology Information, which is part of the National Institute of Health, on research conducted by the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. So this is official. OSHA, NIH. These are your bureaucrats that you love.
Well, all right, love's a strong word.
This study, so it says exactly what I'm sure you can imagine, what the people listening to this podcast can imagine. They say The impulses from gunfire present a significant hazard to the hearing of the shooter and nearby shooters and bystanders. The most common approach to protect from exposures has been to provide personal protective equipment. Hearing protection devices. However, the standard for industrial hygiene practice has been beginning with eliminating or replacing the process that produces the exposure. So think finding a way to fire a bullet without a rapidly burning propellant. So, you know, those electromagnetic guns.
Yeah, rail gun.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. That would be industry standard. Then you would move to engineering or administrative solutions to minimize exposure, which would be suppressors, mufflers.
Yes, mufflers. It's like, so if you're driving a car if you have a car that's really loud, you don't demand that everybody in the world wear headphones.
Yeah.
You put a muffler on the car to keep it quieter.
So, and then finally, according to this, and then finally relying on PPE as a last resort. So what this is saying is, if you have an easily adaptable solution in the form of a suppressor, and this is government. Now, I would disagree with the application of this paper based on the principle of bureaucratic states should be making no laws.
Yes, yeah.
You know, like you said before, they should have just stopped when they said the government shall make no law.
Yeah, right. First five words of Article 1.
But for those people that say that, you know, thou shalt toe the line of the administrative state, this is them saying,
yeah,
hey, here's what it is.
This is a solution. And
they provide, you know, data and tables where you look through, and even the suppressed firearms that they're testing are all above the threshold for where they say, no, this is too loud.
Yeah, anything over like 100 decibels, they're starting to get into, I forget what the official limit is, because it's not just a limit, but it's a limit of exposure over time. But like pretty much once you start moving over the 100 decibels point, it's like you need to start taking steps to
seriously mitigate it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
They say that now in the study wrapped up, so some people might get a little bit wise, might get a little bit snarky and say, well, yeah, but if you're using subsonic ammunition, and I see the videos on YouTube, and you know, oh, it's the bolt hitting the back of the receiver is louder than the shot, so therefore. So again, hey, if you're the kind of people that love the bureaucratic state, they say, they wrapped it up with saying, although the use of a suppressor and or low velocity ammunition yielded significant reductions in auditory risk to the unprotected shooter, hearing protection is still recommended when firing any gun.
And where's the best place to have that hearing protection?
On the end of the gun.
On the end of the gun. Now, it's not to say that if suppressors happened, I would never wear earphones again. Of course I would. But
I still would.
Yeah, of course I still would.
I would enjoy my time at the range, and I would enjoy it even more knowing that I'm not bothering the neighbors. It's It's essentially like running your gas-powered lawnmower.
This is like one of those things where, I don't know, it's like I don't understand where people's minds go when they want to do things like ban the ownership of body armor. Like, where does your brain go to come up with that one? You know, there's literally no downside. It's purely defensive. Yeah, so when people come up with some of this stuff, I just don't understand where the brain goes.
But those are the people that have their opinion informed by Hollywood, by newspapers that, you know, I was finding articles all the way back to the 1920s into the teens and the 20s where they're sensationalizing.
Exactly right.
For the same thing that they do it for now, for revenue. They're a business.
It's all about the clicks, man. In the 1920s, totally about the clicks.
Paper sales. Hey, we got to sell papers. Let's get a little. Let's get something with a little jam, a little juice on the front page.
Yep.
And now it just happens to be advertising revenue. How many people are watching your news story? How many people click on the article? How many people click on the Facebook link? So yeah, you know,
fun topic. I would very much like to see the bill passed. I think it's got approximately the same odds as a snowball's chance in hell of actually passing, but it's a very fun topic, and you know, trying something like this may open the door for another attempt a little bit later on, and you know, maybe someday something will happen. Before we wrap up for tonight, breaking news out of Dallas. You're right. So the NRA annual meeting wrapped up over the weekend. And then yesterday and today, I think they had like a bunch of board meetings, and I'm not privy to all that stuff, but they had like meetings and elections.
That's the inside sandwich making. But if you go on, some of Goal's social media accounts, you can see great pictures. Mike was taking a bunch of pictures, and
on the,
people at the various
the
events.
Account. Yep,
saw the Lord and Savior himself, Jerry Michalik, in one of the photos.
And the angels sang, and the lights came up. Yeah, so
and it was good.
So the leadership, after, as we know, Wayne LaPierre stepped down in January, and it's been under kind of temporary limbo stewardship in the meantime. There was a vote. New leadership is happening in a 30-37 vote. The board has elected former Republican U.S. Congressman and, by the way, 2008 Libertarian candidate for president, Bob Barr out of Georgia, as the NRA president. Also, Doug Hamlin was elected executive vice president and CEO, in other words, basically replacing Wayne LaPierre. He defeated Ronnie Barrett in a vote of 35-31. Now, Doug Hamlin is... I don't have the deep, like, institutional knowledge that, like, a Jim or somebody that, a lot of these people do have, but Doug is kind of an insider. He was one of the lieutenants going back, but I don't think that we see this as necessarily a bad thing from a reform perspective.
It's always going to come down to, okay, now what?
Yeah, so, right. So you have it. Now what are you going to do with it? So Hamlin reappointed Randy Kozic, I'm sorry, I don't know, as executive director of the ILA, and appointed Joseph DeBurgalis as executive director of the NRA General Operations. And, by the way, Goal's executive director, Jim Wallace, was elected to a one-year term as the 76th NRA director, garnering 212 votes. I think he pulled ahead of his closest competitor by like 70 votes. So
it was a pretty solid.
Well. Yeah,
it was a good W.
Yep.
So congratulations to Jim. I know it's
or condolences. Right?
It is a lot of work, especially from the perspective of always wanting to do the best and the most for the firearms community. And Jim's always been, someone that says, "Hey, I want a seat at the table to do."
Yeah. Right. To get it done.
Champion for those rights. So
I'd very much like to have him on, because he was there for the whole meeting and so forth. I'd like to drag him in here to, lay out the land and give us.
Yeah. I mean, they were just traveling back within the last day or so.
Oh, he was like in a car on the way to his house from the airport when I talked to him this afternoon. So he's gassed. He's not coming on tonight.
So we can follow up with that later.
I got to kind of let this settle out a little bit, because there is some other stuff down ballot, like the two vice presidents. And again, I don't have like the institutional knowledge that a lot of people do. But overall, it feels like a mixed bag trending towards a win. I think overall it feels like a victory, but I'm going to talk to people who know more about it than I do.
Yeah. Well, stepwise, so I would say it's a tentative win, just because at least there's movement.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that really wouldn't have been a win is if
they just totally stymied
if it just turned into infighting, and
we're going to reelect exactly the same people and make no changes.
Yeah. So you need someone to at least start, steering the ship.
Yeah.
I mean, I
don't know.
Even if it's not in the direction that you think it should be, it's better than no one at the helm. So,
in light of everything that's going on, I'm hopeful.
I've never met these individuals in particular. I mean, Barrett's the only one I know by name, and I have to say I'm a little bit biased to it, because the positions that Barrett has taken in the past, as far as not selling arms to
very principled positions,
not selling arms to town law enforcement that they can't sell to the townspeople, kind of stuff. So from a principal's perspective, I really do appreciate that. So, but that's just a matter of name recognition. That's not to disparage anyone who ran against him or whatever. But this is now, it's now in the territory of, okay, we got some names, we got some positions filled. What's the vision? What's the plan? What's your plan for the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah. Let's start seeing some results now. It's not like,
there are immediate needs that need to be addressed. There are interim goals that need to be that need to be set and met, and that there, I think now is a great time to discuss the long-term future of where the NRA wants to go. Because I mean, for those who are not aware, it is the oldest continuously running civil rights organization in the United States.
Like it or not, folks. Yes, it is. Yeah.
An institution that's run by people. People are fallible. People are prone to, the weaknesses of human nature.
Being human.
So it is what it is. Having a plan to say, all right, we've existed since 1871. We would like to see that extend into 2071 with some gusto, with a little bit of jam, a little bit of juice. Let's get some blood flowing here.
Right. Let's get past all of this lawsuit stuff and, start reinvigorating things for a new future.
How do we move forward from this? Because really, I think they're looking at, how do we rebuild membership? How do we rebuild the confidence of our members that, we are targeted, we're inspired, we're energetic, we're going after it, we're getting after it. And, we're going to be putting some results on the horizon.
There you go. So we will see how things shake out. That is actually going to do it for today. Thanks for listening in. Be sure to subscribe to the Goal Podcast and check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Goal Podcast MA, on YouTube at the Goal Podcast, or on Twitter at Goal Update.
To join Goal, visit goal.org and click the Join Renew button at the top of the homepage.
If you have a topic you think we should cover, if there's something going on in your club or your town, or if you have a question for the mailbag, shoot us an email at goalpodcast@goal.org.
The Goal Podcast is a production of Gun Owners Action League of Massachusetts. The views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Goal, its staff, or affiliates.